So hey everyone, happy Friday. This is the oh no, it's hidden now. Um, we're going to be starting officially in a couple minutes, but pre-show banter with the one and only Scotty C. Good to have you. Good to have everyone
Yeah,
else.
good to be back.
And I should say, in preparation for this show, I did finally. I just wrapped it up a few minutes ago, watching this video on Solana by what's his name? DB Crypto, I
DB
believe.
Crypto. Yes.
And yeah, it's interesting. So, and he might be watching this. Well, if he is, he can chime in and correct me on wrong things. It's it's a fascinating topic, and it's one of those things that we're going. It's one of those things that's going to have just so much nuance, I'm sure, because nothing is straightforward in the crypto space. And like I am a huge fan of the crypto space and what it does and all this kind of stuff. And it's hard to be that and also be completely it's hard to be that because most people are like one coin maxis or something so they can be critical of all the scams and other nonsense in the space. But I'm not a one coin
Mm,
maxi, and I am critical of the scams and other nonsense, but like like Bitcoin's one of those ones that's been very interesting for me because Bitcoin started out as like the righteous project that like probably one of the highest percentages of alignment with stuff that really matters from the early days of any crypto project because
mhm.
there wasn't any money in it in the beginning. And then over
Yeah.
time it's slowly been this like transition to custodial stuff, and then all the people around it have been the community's become much more anti-competition, pro-regulation, pro-dictatorship, pro like a bunch of it's just been crazy to see over time. And it's hard to be like Bitcoin's awesome or Bitcoin's complete trash. And
Hmm.
it just sometimes you just got to call things out as they happen in real time, you know?
Yeah. I mean, part of that I would say is like if people are pro dictatorship, it's really just because it's not even crypto. It's like if anyone big jumps on the bandwagon for something, everyone's just gonna be like, doesn't matter. Like we love you. Thanks for joining the bandwagon. Like no worries. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
And then we're going to
yeah,
ignore all of your own sins because you
yeah,
might pump our
exactly.
bags. So
Yeah,
it's kind of
yeah. That
it's a
tends
little
to be
weird.
the case.
All
Yeah.
right, well, let's launch into this thing officially. All right, let's hit the intro. Three, two, one, go. So, hey everyone, officially this time, welcome to the Digital Cash Rundown, episode 167. It's quite a few of them. They're really racking up these days. I'm joined by the one and only Scott C. Business, aka Scott Cunningham. How's it going, man?
It's going good. How many of these 167 episodes are me in the episode now?
100.
Probably a good handful.
No, not
100.
100, but you probably, I don't know, definitely top three as far as guess, possibly top two or one. I haven't
Yeah,
actually
because we've
checked it
done it
out.
every a couple of months for a long time now.
Yeah. And it's always appreciated because you've always had good insights on the space and a good microphone. And those are always
Yeah,
good pairing that you don't
yeah,
always see. There's a lot of I've had
yeah.
a lot of guests join from their phone, and that's
Well,
like I
that's
appreciate.
always like a heart drop. You're like, no, like I got to work around this now.
Yeah, it's like does no one have a laptop with a webcam, like a built-in camera, not even an external one like me? Like, no, I'm just gonna do. I don't know. There's mini rant. There's something. I am
Or
such.
they're using like the microphone from their laptop with no headphones. That's probably like the biggest known for like a podcast.
Yeah. Sometimes it's been better than their external mic though. But uh,
True.
my I am such a despite trying to be on top of things, I'm such a tech boomer in that I've been using like computers and stuff for like 30 plus years. Like I've been like, and I was very late to the mobile phone, much less smartphone game. And
Mm.
it just annoys me when people do, like, now I'm full on mobile and stuff, right? Obviously, I've gotten to
Oh
the
yeah.
present day, but I'm such a boomer in terms of, like, I hate it when people design mobile first things. And one of the biggest frustrating things was, what was the predecessor to Spaces called? Yeah, was it Clubhouse? Was that what it was?
Clubhouse. Yeah,
I
yeah,
never
yeah.
used Clubhouse. It sounded like a stupid idea. And,
I don't even think I downloaded it. Yeah.
and then
I'm right on the same boat with you. Like I despise YouTube Shorts and stuff, but it's like the game is the game.
yeah, and then what's it called? Then when Spaces came around, I was kind of a later adopter. I do a lot of them now, but I was kind of a later adopter. But it still annoyed me to no end the divergence in functionality, where like they would not
Mhm.
let you host a space from anything but a mobile device at first. They would not let you speak, and then
I think you can
you
now, but
can
I
now.
tried it
Yes.
and it didn't work very well for me. Like I don't know if I was doing it wrong, but I was like, ah, I can't be bothered. I guess I'm going back to the phone. But we'll see.
Yeah, it's I do default to using a phone with headphones when I do a space these days, just because, even though I'd rather be right here in this chair with this microphone and this computer,
Yeah,
I,
yeah, yeah.
just because it's I want to make sure it all works. But it just annoyed me. Like, let's just do it in the phone. Let's just jump on a space real quick on my phone and do this. And like, I just hate it. No,
Yeah.
do a real thing like on a computer, you freaking savages. And then like, we
I
don't have a
know.
desktop wall. It's a mobile only. It's like, do you do big financial? Like, my mobile phone is like my pocket cash for crypto, right? I'm not going to be doing like my big old trades is my, I'm not going to use that on my phone. I'm not doing, and this is also maybe a generational thing where I kind of grew up when I had a bank doing like, what is it, paper checks and that stuff, or just like doing bank
Yeah.
transfer, like all the kind of bank stuff on the computer, and then having a mobile banking app, like paying bills, like like paying your rent using your phone. For me, was just like, why would you be out in the wild with like your rent payment? Like, why wouldn't you do
Right.
that in the safety of your home? Just as a different like mindset. So, yeah,
No,
that's
I mean I'm right there with you. Like ugh, everything is mobile first, and I'm like, if you don't have a web app, like no thanks. That was my biggest one of the big things when I was auditing social platforms was, do you have a web app? And if it was just an app on the App Store, I was like centralized. Like if Google or Apple says no, like this whole thing is over. Like yeah,
yeah, it is pretty crazy. All right, well, let's actually get this thing going. First, I got to shell
yeah. Let's
for
jump into it.
a little bit, and just chatting about sponsorship and stuff. I never thought I would do a sponsorship on the podcast, but then Coin ATM Radar was like, "Hey, we're probably going to lose money, but we want to throw you a bag anyway." And I'm like, "Lose money away? That sounds great to me." So, this
Yeah, they're a good sponsor. So
they're good people. Yeah. So this podcast is
yeah,
sponsored by Coin ATM Radar. When buying crypto with cash, an ATM is much more reliable and safer than meeting some random person in a random place or paying your mortgage on your phone in the Starbucks line. Just kidding. Unlike an exchange, which could freeze your account, you truly own all the crypto you buy. Unless you buy and like withdraw to an exchange, in which case, why would you do that? But anyway, with Coin ATM Radar, you can find crypto ATMs and other services where you can buy or sell cryptos for cash. On their website, search by coin, address, if the ATM supports selling as well as buying. You can also search by geo area, like country, state, or city. You can also check and compare actual current fees at different ATMs. To find out more, go to coinatmradar.com or coinatmradar.com. And I practiced that way too many times to get it to like flow off the tongue like that, but it is what it is. All right, let's launch into our fellow DB Crypto has been did a video on Solana. Now Solana, of course, has been like one of the very top, definitely I would call it the top crypto today as far as the hottest one, the one that with the most stuff going on around it,
most
etc.
hype, most things going on. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know, would I say most users? I don't think so. But like,
Not based on the video.
yeah. But like a lot of new stuff, a lot of people talking about, most crossover. So it's sort of like coming after the king, right? So let's hit on that one real quick. So just showing you the X post or whatever. It just seemed going TPS like that. So I did watch. This is
Yeah.
a good video. It's about 42 minutes long. I did watch the whole thing today in preparation for this because I sort of gotten all the majority of my Solana knowledge from just bits and pieces and Justin Bond's Twitter threads and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
having a critical point of view is good. And so I went through this thing and thought I made some pretty interesting points. And what do you think? What's your perspective on Solana? I don't know if we've really actually, you and I have actually talked much on Solana before.
I don't know if we've really gotten into it because a lot of this craziness has happened over the last little while. I think on the last podcast, though, I told you I was testing out
Mm-hmm.
soulcard.ch or whatever it was called.
Yeah, I remember that.
That and I honestly forget the other one now. BitStore or something. They had a card.
Mm-hmm.
They were good, but the issue was after like a week or two, the cards always get canceled. They refund you your money, but the cards always get canceled. So it never works out long term. Um, the issue though that I had with Soul Card was the Solana blockchain went down for 2 weeks or something during that time when I was trying to
Mm.
withdraw at the end. And I literally every day tried like 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, evening, failed transaction every single time for 2 weeks. Finally, after 2 weeks, I could sell my soul. I didn't have very much, but it's just
Sell
like
your
a
soul.
really good like
That was funny.
yeah. Yeah, but it was like it was very eye-opening to be like, okay, so yeah, it's not really a viable blockchain if I want to have successful transactions that actually go through.
So,
Um,
which wallet were
yeah.
you using, by the way?
I was using Trust Wallet, which I actually think
Mm.
is pretty good. Maybe if I had used a Solana native wallet, it might have been different, arguably, but
Yeah, that's what I don't know if you've seen him running around the interwebs there, but Vinny Barbosa, he writes for Finbold and he's a good dude. Used to be a nano guy, kind of still is, but he's more broad now. He made a post about he tried like 16 times to like move USDC or something because he lives like 80% on
right.
crypto or something. He's like, and so he's
Yeah.
trying to use it and it just didn't work. And so Justin Bonds chimed in, was talking about stuff, and basically seems like from Justin's perspective, Solana works pretty reliably. Like in every single time he's tried stuff, it's worked. It seems to be, according to him, is like a wallet issue, meaning the wallets.
I mean, arguably, I guess from an end user
Yes,
perspective, it doesn't really matter.
yes,
Like
that was
if
one
your
of.
crypto only works with like one or two wallets or something, then it's like, okay, so it's even more centralized, and that doesn't make any sense. How is it incompatible with like universal wallets?
Yeah, and that's been something that I'm sort of more sensitive to than maybe the average person because not only do I use crypto for everything, but I've also been involved in the Dash world for a very long time and been doing biz dev since the beginning of the year. And it is so hard to get companies to be like, hey, can you do my token thing the right way? And, oh, yeah, we'll see. And then
Hmm.
like 6 months later and eight different people later, they might get into it. And then they're like, well, do you want to contribute to develop a development grant? I'm like, Jesus Christ, guys, it's a couple of RPC commands. You can do it in 20 minutes. But so
Yeah.
the difference with that, though, is most of that from the Dash side has been instant transactions. And so the worst thing will just be a payment provider, a wallet won't display that it's confirmed yet. It'll just be like, oh, we
Mm.
got to wait for confirmations, even though 2 seconds you don't have to do anything. But on the
Right.
actual blockchain level, it did work. It just works, right? And I guess that's the difference with Solana is, oh, they don't have the fees configured right in a certain way, and then the actual transactions don't work. It's not just that the wallets are
Hmm.
displaying a less than ideal, you know, response to this. It just the actual blockchain doesn't work because of these configuration settings. So I wonder what it is about things like Trust Wallet, for example, that have a much higher transaction failure rate than the official-ish Solana wallets.
Mind you, I sent you the thing on Dune.com,
Yes.
which has the non-vote transactions,
Mm-hmm.
and the latest one is up to August 5th, and we
Mm-hmm.
have 32.5% failed transactions. So it hovers between like 30 to 40-ish, which is
Yeah.
obviously absurd for any blockchain. So like what's an acceptable rate of failure? Like 2%, 1%?
Yeah, so let me describe this from like a user experience perspective. The
Hmm.
acceptable rate of failure as interpreted by the end user is a statistically zero, as in never,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
it's super rare, like once a year or two, if it's a that kind of thing. It's like, think about how many times you've had a like, I wouldn't say not weird crypto card, but like ba- bank card decline. Most people
yeah. Hmm.
go, I would say a lot of, I mean, maybe broke people are different, but like a lot of people probably go years without having a card decline, and they use it many times a day. That's just my
Hmm.
assumption. Again, I've not had a actually like used a bank account in many years, but like, so that's kind of the thing. Is like, what is the Bitcoin transaction failure rate? You could argue it's really low, right? You could also argue it's like it's like really high, depending on your perspective from like the end user perspective. My I would rather a transaction like take longer, or then you have to bump up a fee or something, than it just doesn't work and you just start hitting your head against the thing, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Personally,
Or that you could just pay more, like, to make it work, right? Like, if it was like the difference between like it's only going to cost you a cent, but it's not going to work, or you pay $1 and it will absolutely work, that would be more reasonable. But like that is not what we have because if you're trying to sell and the market's like tanking and it's like cannot transact, it's like I'm screwed. You like for me it was like $100, but I'm sure for some people it's like an insane amount of money.
yeah.
And then I think we talked about this last time very briefly. Um, the issue if they do actually have a Solana ETF and then
Hmm.
the blockchain like goes down for 2 weeks, or we have massive like failure rates, like how does that work with the ETF? Like, so if everyone starts selling the ETF because they still have access to the ETF in the stock market,
Hmm.
but no one can sell the actual asset because the blockchain is not working or whatever, what happens? Like when it comes back online, does it just like go to zero once that starts to be realized? Like that
Depends on what the
sounds like
ETF
a,
does.
I guess, like, but it sounds like if that actually does go through and we have an ETF and that can happen, that sounds like a recipe for like the next Terra Luna.
Well, it's funny because that's kind of the situation that Bitcoin and Ethereum find themselves in today with in regards to the ETF, where if someone does a bunch of
Well,
stuff,
paper trading, but like
yeah,
not like if there was paper trading and
hmm,
there is, but I could still sell if I was like, oh crap, like it's getting really bad, let me
hmm,
sell. The difference in this situation would be like you see it's going bad and you can't sell your Solana
yeah,
unless you were in the ETF only. But like, you know what I mean? Like that would be pretty crazy.
yeah, it's kind of, it is weird, and like I never thought I'd be put in a position where I'm kind of taking the the side of congestion related fee markets, because that's been the bane of my existence for a decade
Yeah.
now, right? But if you think about it, like there's only a certain transaction capacity, right? And for any, and sometimes that's zero, right? But there's only a certain amount of transaction capacity,
Mm.
and basically what Bitcoin and Ethereum do is, if that more than that amount of people want to transact, it just shifts the transactions to the top ones, the richest people,
Hmm.
basically the people paying the most. And so if you have a ton
Hmm.
of people, it still works, but then everyone who's excluded is everyone who hasn't paid as much, but they're also kind of stuck in waiting to where if this queue clears out, all of a sudden they become the next richest, and then they get moved in too. So they do eventually get processed. Whereas with Solana, from my understanding, of course, I admit ignorance here about the fee model and what that has to do with the failure rate. But from my understanding, it can do this many transactions, and any more during that time period just randomly fail. And so it's a lot harder
Mm.
to make. There isn't like a surge pricing thing. There isn't like a price gouging, which I'm a big fan of price gouging, by the way. I'm not a fan of situations which cause it to happen, but I'm a big fan of price
Mm.
gouging over no supply at all, right? It's so
Yes.
I I like that the fee market is a way to buy reliability when there should not be any. It's a backup almost. It's like a backup mechanism.
Yeah.
Whereas to mine, the way I'm looking at this, seems like there is no backup mechanism for Solana.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, it took me 2 weeks just to get rid of some Solana. I can't imagine if you're if you have a lot of money and you're trying to get it all out or something like that would just be concerning.
Mm-hmm.
Not even that. I mean, it's so I mean, going slight side topic here. It's so hyped up that recently I got in an Uber and I
Oh,
always ask my drivers, as I mentioned, on most of these podcasts that, oh, what do you know about crypto? What are you looking at? He's like, Solana, man, you just put $100 into every meme coin and you just you can make and I was like, he's like, oh, you got to do this right now, as you're in the car, do this now. And I was like, are you telling everyone this? Holy shit.
yeah. Which,
I
is
was like,
funny.
that
I hate to say it, for a window of time, that might not be a bad investment strategy. As far as
But I mean, he's like, yo,
yeah,
I've made $1,000. This is a sure thing. And I was like, I wouldn't go around telling everyone you meet that it's a sure thing because you made $1,000.
yes.
Oh,
As someone who knows someone who got absolutely destroyed on Elizabeth Horan, yeah, it's not a sure thing. It's
yeah.
gambling, right? It's a form of gambling, and there's no judgment about that. But it is kind of funny how I would say that that's a simultaneous indictment and endorsement of Solana. Is that the indictment is so much of it is just crap that cab drivers or whatever Uber drivers just playing with to whatever. It's like the lowest of low. It's like
Mhm.
the Jake Paul of crypto or whatever, the Paul brothers of crypto, whatever it is. At the same time,
Yeah.
that's sort of an endorsement of it in that it's not just these high-minded crypto nerds who are like, our thing is better, and it just never reaches the average person. It's like, no, this is average person crypto, and an average person can use it. And usually they can do it for cheap, and usually their transactions go through. That's all good, but
The
then
issue
with the
though is
big
none of
caveats, yeah.
them know. Yeah, none of them know anything about the blockchain though. It's not like they're
Mm-hmm.
not doing this on a DEX. They're
Mm-hmm.
doing this on a centralized exchange, so it's always working. So to them, they're like, oh, this works fine. There's no issues.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, you're trading on a centralized exchange, so they're not actually moving the Solana around. They're just changing the numbers on the interface. If you had Solana and used it, you'd know that it's not working right now, which is what that was me at the time. I was like, well, it doesn't even work. So I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, oh, well, I do it on a centralized exchange. So it's fine. It's like, yeah, until that centralized exchange steals your money or goes bankrupt or like, there's really no winning in that, in those kinds of situations. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
it's the failure rate. So there are some. So when talking about the video, for example, that DB Crypto did, as well as just the general critique of Solana, I'm obviously trying to start with the technical stuff, because I think the technical critiques are, weakest is not the right term, but there's the fewest actual technical critiques. There are some, and we've been obviously talking about them. It's the other stuff that's for me the big red flag, which again, someone like
mhm.
Justin Bonds is not really preoccupied with too much. He's more like a technical analyst on that, on that stuff. But so
Mhm.
the scaling, Solana's doing an incredible amount of transactions, which should be, that's good. That they're able to do that. The failure mechanism of sure, maybe they'll figure out how to scale the network further, and then you have the same volume of people and no failures. The failure mechanism is something that's concerning, that I think that you should be able to should go back to a mempool and a fee market for those kinds of things, that then allow people who have emergencies to get their transactions through, as opposed to people who don't have emergencies. There's no way to sort them, and so it's an inefficient allocation of transactional capacity, I would say, because
Mhm.
it's just it's communist, right? Everyone's equal. But so the other thing,
But the issue is,
yes,
it's if it's all bots transacting and my transactions are failing because bots are transacting, then it's then what are we doing here?
yeah, and bots usually run out of money quicker than people, because
And because the fees are so low and it's you don't have to pay more, the bots have an incentive almost to well, I guess it's fine. We can just run these, and it's not going to cost much.
Hmm.
We don't have to fight to get our transactions in. We'll just keep putting our bots through, and
Yeah, because humans have value. They value things, and that's why they pay for them. And so, therefore, if the cost goes up, but you still value it, you're still going to pay for it. Whereas a bot, almost not, and that's to differentiate from automated things, where it's like you have a trading bot that sells your position on this and that, or that's completely different because it's still real value things. But what I mean by
mm-hmm.
bots here is like fake nonsense, just pumping things through.
Yeah,
They're
just like looking like there's more volume essentially in the
Yes,
transactions.
those
Yeah,
bots have like a basically 100% failure rate as far as like to provide value. It's so
yeah.
other than just by providing transactions. So if there's anything resembling a real cost to pumping that up, then they just dry up. It's gone. So that's the problem with like the fee market kind of thing. Or that's what a fee market kind of thing would solve. And like if the fee market would elevate the baseline price, like the to like maybe 50 cents or even $1 a transaction. We're getting Bitcoin territory here, but whatever. Um, if you got it at 50, 80 cents, then just the bot traffic would just be gone because that's an incredible amount of money to be spending to do nothing. Unless you're actively trying to
Mm-hmm.
attack the network, you've opened up like shorts on, or like unless you're doing something like that, it's just not going to make sense. Um,
I guess the issue though is if they do start going the fee route, then it's
mhm.
like, how are you better than like Ethereum or
More
whatever? Like, because
capacity.
then it'll just come down to the, you know what I mean? Like, it'll just come down to the actual costs.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard to win there, but I mean, maybe we'll send this video over to Solana and see if they're gonna add a fee model and fix this whole issue.
Yeah. I think so. Like the thing is when you start to get into these little mechanics, like I just thought of a simple solution and I've already thought of 8 million different things that make that solution a bad idea. So because what are people going to do next? Like what if it's like the base fee is the same, but then if you have if you have 3 failures in a row, then you can bump up to a premium category that puts it at the top. But then of course now you have like now the validators will be running so many bots themselves, so everyone has to get bumped up, so everyone pays more. It's just always going to be some nonsense going on there. So
Mm.
yeah, so the thing that I don't, and I admit I'm not hugely understanding. I from a hypothetical standpoint understand sharding way better than Solana's mechanism of parallelization stuff.
Yeah.
These consensus messages and things like that seem to take up a giant percentage of transactions, right? And it doesn't seem like that's sustainable long term. To me, at the top again, and this is speaking from a place of ignorance here. Uh, it would seem to
DB, feel free to jump in the chat.
Yes, absolutely. Feel free to jump in and what your observations on that. To me, it feels like making consensus transaction. It feels like that's a lot of transactions to just not send transactions. That's a lot of data and throughput wasted on not sending transactions. So even if you do get to like millions of TPS, like a million TPS, you're only getting 200,000 TPS in like real ones. And like if another chain can only do 250,000 TPS, but none of them are consensus transactions, then they already have a better capacity. That would seem to me. So I'm not exactly sure how that thing works. Maybe I just need to do more in-depth research, but it does seem like almost like by putting that on chain, it's a technical fault that was created for marketing purposes almost. That would be my gut reaction as an ignorant person who's not dug into the depths of how Solana works. I don't know if you have any perspective on
Yeah.
that.
I mean, I'm just like looking at the Dune page still, and if you scroll down, it also talks about, well, like it has data on failed and successful transactions for voting, and they're almost like 100%. So it's like they're just pushing through their voting transactions and then letting everything else kind of figure it out. And interestingly enough, the percentage of vote transactions as of August 6th is 83.5%,
Damn.
meaning like only a fraction of the actual transactions on the chain are just like normal transactions. That's actually pretty wild. And like the lowest point that I can see here, at least on the chart, is 73.5%. So still like heavily the majority is all just like voting, and it's not even like trading or sending Solana or doing anything. So that's pretty wild as well. Like most of the chain is being clogged up by governance and not even like actual use.
Yeah, that's
Pretty wild.
that's wild.
Yeah.
One. So DB Crypto by the way dropped some message and he said it won't grow exponentially as usage grows, but it will go up with increasing nodes. Oh, which any decentralized change should probably do. Yeah. So point taken about that. Now I was trying to think of some other rough critiques. One thing that I do remember from the video that I will sort of I don't know, push back on's the right term, but I will kind of offer maybe a slightly different perspective, was the comparison of fee revenue to inflation or coin issuance. That basically, because coin issuance is more than fee revenue, it's not like sustainable or it's broke or something like that. Slightly different. I mean, yes, but the slightly different perspective on that is coin issuance is just a hodl fee. It's a fee applied to people who currently hold the token. And so it's not that as long as from the network perspective, as long as the network is running, as long as the validators are being paid enough to do what they do, the network itself is running and sustainable, I guess. But it's just that are users okay with paying the inflation fees or the actual transaction fees or the other way around? And so, for example, some coins, like, for example, Monero, are big into the tail emission kind of school of thought, where they're like, well, we'll have like a constant, what equates to a hodl fee, right? Like a permanent, very small thing just to have a baseline of performance on the network. And then for people to actually send transactions and stuff, then you'll have fees on top of that. And then there's some like the Maya protocol, and I think Kujira, although it's not a good example these days, but like zero inflation, 100% fee driven. Like if no one uses it, there's no fee revenue, period. And like, or you could call end game Bitcoin, where there's no issuance anymore. All the 21 million are mined. You kind of do that. So if some coin wants to do a hybrid model, like where it's fee and issuance, or if it's purely issuance, like it's zero fee, but you have a relatively high tail emission, but it's always zero fee from then on or whatever. I mean, that's another way of doing it. That's not sustainable. That just charges a different group of people. And as a store of value, people probably would not want to use that, but they would for high frequency transactions because they're free and they're just paying for the privilege of holding the tokens. That would make sense. So just a slight, I guess I won't say disagreement is the right word even. It's just like a slight clarification on that critique. I'm like, I don't think that's as much of a critique yet. If it does, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's fair. And I mean, I'll say it's not like every single thing is like a big red flag. Sometimes it's just like, and there's this, and there's this, and there's this. And it's not like, it's not like the craziest thing ever. It's just like, hey, I'll just everything in one video. Like, obviously, not every single thing is going to be like a bombshell, but it's like, yeah. And I think that's fair. Like, not everything is like the biggest like issue, but like, sometimes it's just like, it could be better, it could be worse, could be a little different, a little semantics, but yeah, I more or less agree with your take.
Yeah, it's so as far as I'm like, I don't understand the consensus mechanism, like how like the consensus transaction thing enough to tell whether that's just something that just has to be there, or whether it's something that's a design flaw. The transaction failure thing, I think, is a design flaw from a UX perspective. But so like if Solana scales massively and is only ever at like 50 to 80% capacity, but never hits that thing, you have 0% failure rate statistically at that point, then it's not a problem. It's just that with growing pains, it might happen. So, but on the technical whole, it seems like Solana is probably one of the better shades out there, if you want to say on the technical whole. Where things start to get really weird is, stuff that could impact technical things later, but also just so obviously the early criticism stuff like this, the hidden coin supply where they just said, oh, this is the supply. Like, hey, can we check a blocks explorer? Like, build it yourself. What? And then they build a block explorer. Like, hey, you're hiding some money. Wow, market maker. Whoops, you couldn't get it all back. Never mind. Like, that's crazy. And then consistent lying about stuff.
It's very, very much reminiscent of. I don't know who owns the flush address for Hex. I don't know who owns the origin address. Not me. I mean, someone owns it, but I don't know. Like it's very reminiscent of that. It's like there's money somewhere, but like I don't know, and it is what it is. And it's like obviously that's yours, but all right.
Yeah, that kind of early stuff. I think some people have sort of moved past it, been like, it's fine, move it. There are legitimately a lot of Solana users because I do run into them. I do see like companies that are supporting Solana transactions. It's clearly that it's clearly that even though they faked it, they sort of made it. But the degree to which they have made it is, I think, inflated, obviously. The thing where it starts to become more of a technical critique, even though I don't like those people, is, first of all, the people involved, as far as I understand, with the outright lies and deception in the past, do seem to still be very involved with the project today. So it's not like, some people in the past did some sketchy. Who cares? It's like, no, these people are still there. They're still doing these things. They're being rewarded for their poor decisions. And there is nothing quite like facing the truth, the hard truth of things, to make you make a product that works. And so I don't trust the future of Solana, even though the technical present seems to be pretty solid. Again, maybe not top of the shelf, but like seems like they got a lot of things right. I don't trust the technical future as long as the same people are making these decisions, because they're making decisions to, I guess, lie, cheat, and steal their way to the top. And when that runs out, will they be able to build an actual product that works on its own merits and continue to make it work? I would say no.
Yeah. And I'd go back to the Hex example here too. Like there's a lot of people, it's like, okay, well, Richard can't print Hex infinitely now and manipulate the price, so it's good now. It's like, okay, but he could, and he arguably did. So do we just say it was a scam, it's no longer a scam, but like how does that work? Like, is it a scam once a scam, always a scam? Or is it like, well, if they change some things, even though they already did all the stuff and that's already played out, if they change it afterwards, then is it okay? It's like, for me, no. For some people, maybe. But like you said, all those people are still involved in it. I don't trust that. It really feels like, to me, it's like the next Hex / Terra Luna is like brewing in Solana, and I will not be surprised if we see something crazy happen.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because like the life cycle of sketchy crypto stuff in the early days, it started out with some, on the surface, very legit project that, or just constructed that like, oh look, it's this, but then it's just all fraud and the scam, and the founders like pre-mined everything, but secretly through like putting a bug in the mining code and stuff like that to do this, or like just all kinds of other weird stuff. That's how it started. Then you graduate to outright scams, which I would say Hex definitely would be in that category, unless you consider every Hex user to be aware that they're playing a casino game where the house takes some profits. But I don't think that's true. I do think it's been fraudulently marketed. But then now we're graduating into the era of, which I think is an improvement, of scammers building cool tech. Which is like,
yeah,
like, so for example, Terra Luna, yeah.
Maybe the next scam will be, it's like, here's like this crypto card and it's like really useful. And it's like, I mean, if it's a scam, I guess, like, hopefully the next scam is just legit projects that actually work,
Yeah.
It's like that's a scam.
So that's what it seems like. Solana is kind of in that category where it's by a lot. It's supposedly doing a lot of building a lot of innovative tech that hasn't really been done before, pushing boundaries on scaling, stuff like that, doing a bunch of stuff, building a lot of real use cases, a lot of real users, everything, where basically you have to build a real product, but you just kind of like fake how real it is or how many users there are. That's the scam part of things. So you have to like mostly build a not scam to scam, if that's the case, which, you know,
Mhm.
it's kind of like Terra Luna built some interesting stuff like through the algo stable that ended up in the Thorchain lending mechanism. Not exactly that, but something similar to that. And then after Terra collapsed, and it didn't really collapse because I think that the technical design was not sound at the end of the day, but also it was because of,
Algorithmic stablecoins.
yeah, I mean, that's something that
Never.
I'm always going to be a little skeptical of. But
Always. Always.
the thing is, it was Do Kwon screwing people over, which really collapsed it at the end of the day. It wasn't just, oh, whoops, the algo was a little weird. Then you have Kujira, which is its successor, sort of. A lot of the same people who were in Luna and Kujira. Do you know much about Kujira, by the way?
I know a bit. I know it's like been really like a lot of stuff has been happening lately, but I don't know, enough about like the like who created it and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so from my knowledge, it was like the next Terra Luna in terms of like trying to do all this community DeFi stuff. It was also token issuance, everything in fees. They have a USK algo stable, which, as far as I know, even though they went through a massive collapse recently, it briefly depegged to like 60 some cents and went back up. So it's like it's been pretty stable. The problem with Kujira, first, as far as I know, their smart contracts were not 100% open source, which to me is like a big problem. But the other thing is a bunch of DeFi projects in the space, they had their liquidity bootstrapped by the core team to try to like help, again, a little bit of fake it till you make it nonsense again, right? Trying to help provide liquidity to make it grow. The problem is they did that by leveraging their ops budget, literally leveraging the ops budget. Like, and then so then when one little pinprick hit, then the entire ops budget for the team got wiped out. It's just like, what an idiot.
Right.
Like, imagine like a highly leveraged short or whatever with your salary fund. It's just like, oh,
Right.
it's so, again, a hybrid sketchball, like real tech and sketchball, and that's kind of where we're at. And or there's meme coins, which I don't think anyone believes are legit. I think some people might be dumb and think that they're going, oh, why did it crash, and not understanding. But no one thinks that like Slurf or whatever, where the guy lost all that money, no one thinks that that is like the future of tech. Everyone understands it's a meme coin. Like even that cab driver is like, you're gonna make money. He understands that it's like a joke, that you're making money off of the joke, that
Maybe next time I need to be like, do you like what do you like about the tech? Like, what do you like about the blockchain? I guess I never really get that. Well, I mean, it's only like a 5 minute drive or whatever.
Yeah.
But I guess I don't investigate deep enough because once I asked him, he was just like da 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 da. Oh, this mean this mean. And I was like, okay, well, you go for it. Like,
Yeah, maybe it has to be something like maybe you'd have to ask like what's the value in that? Like why would you pay for this? And just if they acknowledge it's like a game, you're just trying to time like the in and the out. Like, oh, everyone's buying in because it's fun. That's one thing. But so I hope that we start graduating towards, the unfortunate thing is crypto, as much as I like, a lot of the coolest tech has been built because of the ridiculous amounts of money thrown into the space. And the ridiculous amounts of money in the space are in there mostly because people are trying to play the casino. Like Solana, what Solana does for the most part is unfortunately what pays the bills in crypto. Like all the stuff that makes money, people buying and selling on exchanges or on DeFi platforms or things like that, or you're facilitating, you're catering to those people, the trader. And the only reason you trade isn't because you just like enjoy trading. It's like you're trying to make it big. You're trying to make easy money. And the easy money thing is, and I would argue that's the killer app for crypto in the short term, because that's the most censored thing in the real world, is like gambling and investments and stuff. As far as you have to be an accredited investor, you have to all this kind of stuff. There's the most safety precautions,
yeah.
and because it's wild, that's where all the That's where the freedom of crypto is the biggest contrast. But like, I just cannot wait to get this out of our system collectively, because like it just sucks that everything is built on that. And I have to say, even all the best projects in the world are kind of destroyed to a certain extent on this, because think about the price chart. Like, pick any solid project and just look at the price chart, and it's just like, well, and then they have the big hype cycle pump, and then it just crashes over a few years down to utility baseline. The problem is it's so hard to get it up again because of where it was. It's like, if it was just a slow burn and it was still at that level, you could get it up pretty quickly. You could get more users, but people are like, oh, it crashed 98%. It's just like, well, could we erase the speculative bubble part from the price history completely and just pretend it never was worth that much, and this is the way it's always been? And then unfortunately, it's just the big, I almost think that like the gambling aspect, like the meme coin stuff, hopefully takes a lot of that stuff out, so legit projects can just build from the ground up. The problem is then they'll never get attention or capital or anything like that, and then maybe they won't be built. So, right. Oh, it's rough. It's rough out there. What can I say?
Yeah, it's hard to solve for that, because it's like, yeah, all the hype is around just like random meme coins and stuff, and no one's like touting all the like really useful projects, and obviously their prices do not reflect that either. But I mean, the hope is that, like you said, like we kind of get this all out of our systems. But I mean, I don't know. Every cycle, there's like a new thing of scams. Though I feel like maybe it's getting progressively better. Like originally, it was just ICO, like pump and dump scams. There's like everyone lost their money, except for like the few people. But it's like, at least to some degree, some people might be making money on meme coins, and they're like, this is a gamble. I don't think people were thinking like ICOs were like gambling. So it was a much different time back then. The last cycle was more like NFTs and like celebrity scams, but it seems like the celebrity stuff is back with Solana. That's why like what we're doing and like what other people who like expose things and talk about like the bad stuff that's happening in the space is actually really important, because we need to like flush all that out so that we actually can just focus on like the good projects.
Absolutely.
And one day, I'll get in a cab and they'll be like, oh yeah, like I invest in Rune because it's like a really great like decentralized swap, and I invest in this because it's like real, and I'll be, oh, fantastic, that's great. But if they're just like, oh, this meme coin's going to the moon and I'm gonna make so much money, it's like, we're not close yet. We still got a lot of work to do.
And it, again, could be another 8 hour long rabbit hole in this case, but like the sad part is like, okay, then just use crypto and don't care about the price investing. The problem with that is, what do you use? You got to use the tokens, where if it's your salary, like happens to me sometimes. So for example, recently I got I'm going to Hive Fest in Croatia in September. So when they pay me for the flight to go there, they paid in a stable coin, and I just could not, like, I had some issue with, I'm trying like with gas, because all gas tokens are just, it's a nightmare. And so I'm like, okay, well, I just have Dash. I'm going to pay for the ticket with Dash, and this is just the reimbursement. And then I'm like, okay. And then a couple weeks later, I needed to buy another flight for another thing. And I'm like, oh, well, the markets are down. Like, that's right when they went like that. And then I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot I have those stable coins, which didn't dump. So that's what I used for most of the stuff for the flight. And so that's like great. The problem is stable coins are kind of a house of cards built on a house of cards. And like, yeah, the way to use crypto without speculating is to just be all in on stables and just use it for what it does. The problem is, at that point, that's not like freedom money. Like freedom money, you have to dip into the volatility. So almost, if you want freedom money, you have to have it all in a token that is already dumped to shit. And so it's not going to do this. Yeah, it's just already there. There's just nothing good anymore. But let's switch to this. Speaking of nothing good.
Speaking of which, just before we jump off, I want to pull up how many banned addresses there are on USDT now.
Here we go.
1,755. $1.2 billion worth of USDT.
Is frozen?
It shot up quite a. Oh, I'm frozen.
No, is it? I'm saying it froze. Like those are frozen
Oh, oh,
funds.
yeah. Sorry, yeah. So yeah, 1.2, well, 1,219,050,790 USDT frozen from 1,755 addresses. It
Yeah.
started to spike up a lot during January of 2024, which is interesting.
Yeah,
But
I do think
yeah.
that all the crackdowns on like Binance and stuff like that caused them to be like, okay, we need to clean things up a little bit and censor some
I
stuff.
need to get one of these for it's not BUSD anymore, right? Because they
It's
switched it over
gone,
to
right?
they
Paxos.
switched it over to something else. I forget. Yeah. PUSD or whatever, Paxos, whatever it is now. I wish there was one for that as well.
Uh huh.
I paid this guy to like refix these because these like went down and I don't know how to do
Hmm.
Dune SQL queries. And I was like, can I give you another $50 to just like make one for Paxos? And he hasn't gotten back to me, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'd like to see PYUSD as well, like the PayPal one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Because they do the same stuff. So yeah.
so like what I'd also like to see, and someone has to do this. Maybe this is going to be your thing. Is in-depth stablecoin censorship type investigation. Like not only how many addresses, but like what percentage of potential like addresses is this? Like is this like just like a very small amount, or is it like serious? And then what's the rate of increase of these? Like how many new ones get added? And then also the bigger thing would
It
be
is increasing. It is at a growing, like increasing rate. But yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe I should like do a really like detailed,
yeah.
comprehensive look at like how much is it increasing year over year? Like, should we expect that it's going to keep getting worse?
What I would like,
I think DAI is like the only good like stable coin now, but
well, even die is
it's
like
still.
ragdoll because of the USDC.
Uh, well, actually, they've gotten much better.
Mm,
I could pull that up too. It used to be like 40%, and then it went all the way down to like 3 or 4%. So I was pretty happy with that. But I mean, that is one bad thing about decentralization is technically you can centralize within a decentralized system because you have the freedom to do so, which is like a little ironic.
yeah,
But
beautiful
yeah,
irony right there.
yeah.
But the funny thing about that stuff is, so what I'd like to know is which addresses are being censored and for what reason. Like, what's the story behind each one of these? It's just like how many arrests were made in Canada over the last year. Okay, well you have a number,
Mm,
and then it's just like, well, but why and who and what are the circumstances? So you can start to see like, you know, 400 people got arrested last year for social media posts that were not directly threatening people's lives. Like, oh, that's a problem to look into. Or it's just like, oh, petty
right.
burglaries. And it's like, well, what are the groups that are doing these? What are the neighborhoods? Is there a correlation? You know, just all the data sets. I love looking at the data sets. And so, as far as I know, I've never had an issue using stablecoins. I've only used them like a half dozen times in my entire life, by the way. Like as far as total transactions, I've used very few.
Right.
But I've never heard of I've never heard of anyone I know getting censored with their stablecoin usage ever. And
Yeah, because it is so small, but it's like until it happens to you, then it's like a big issue,
yes,
you
I
know?
do know people of having their Bitcoin transactions rejected or whatever because of origin of coins or whatever, or flagged or something like that.
Interesting.
And
Yeah, that was
including
happening in
by
Canada a
Shapeshift,
lot.
the
Yeah.
Thorchain
Yeah.
front end
Really?
has
Wow.
has done that. So, and I know they're doing that just like ThorSwap to stay out of jail, right? So they aren't
Right.
complicit in laundering. But again, from this in particular case, which I can't say much more on, but it would not have been a sketchy or criminal thing. It would be a super early Bitcoin holder who just,
Right.
I guess because they've been around since then, it's just like, oh, that was from one of those exchanges that went down in 2010 or whatever. And so therefore it's flagged, or I don't know. But so, yeah, the point is I have heard lots of cases of that, of like banned stuff on Bitcoin especially, But then, like, of actual humans that I know having issues sending their stable coins or having frozen funds, I've never heard about that. The other hand, I've heard of
Yeah.
lots of people having banking issues and stuff like that, or declined transactions, or questions about withdrawing cash or whatever. So it's clearly that for my very, like, simple informal polling, it does seem like stablecoins are still largely uncensored and able to be used for
Mm.
whatever you want. Just I'd like to really drill down on those censorship numbers to see how much real stuff, or is it just literal thefts in North Korea? you know?
Right. I was trying to get the die stats to pull up, but this website is being so finicky. I can't.
Yeah.
Maybe you could check it. It's just diestats.com, but it's not working for me. But last time I checked, it was a pretty good ratio of like stable coins to like just random coins and stuff. It was actually really reasonable. But like a while ago, like a year ago, it was like 40% USDC, and I was like, no, that's crazy. But they fixed that pretty quickly after a lot of criticism. Like a lot of people were like, let's all collectively pull out our USDC, put something else in. Like, so that was a really
Yeah.
good like community effort there. But yeah,
Well, it's not loading for me, so it's probably the same thing, just some issue with
ah,
their nonsense.
yeah,
But yeah, it's been remarkably pretty stable. DAI is one of the only decentralized, at least decentralized-ish stable coins that I've ever seen
hmm
that was accepted at like wide places, like even UST, like during the Terra Luna days, was like not really very many places. So
yeah,
yeah, it's usually it's Tether and USDC, and those are kind of, are you in, those are like Western world versus the rest, or the global South slash Russia, as Ray from No One's likes to say. But like, so for example, I paid a PR invoice not too long ago, and it's someplace in Georgia, and they wanted Tether on Tron, and it's just like, all right, so that's that part of the world, and then like you do stuff like an ad campaign with Brave or something, they're going to be like, hey, can we get USDC on one of the ETH L2s or something, and then that's like, okay, that's that
yeah,
part of the world. The decentralized stables are like mostly internal DeFi mechanisms, which I think is what they really need to be. For a while, I am a fan of, so Thorchain uses stablecoins as a pricing mechanism, so they don't have to do oracles for swaps. And because they have like 5 different stables, one of which is DAI, and then obviously Tether, USDC, and a couple others, that
hmm
kind of decentralize it. So if one of them gets nuked, your pricing mechanism slash oracle is still alive without having to do it. So I like that element of stables. But yeah, this could be a few more hours on stablecoins, because it's such a nuanced and very common issue. Which, by the way, people get so mad when I make posts about stablecoins. They get so mad at me because it's just like,
because like you're criticizing them, and they're like, don't
no,
criticize my stable
no,
coin.
the opposite. I say anything
Oh,
semi-positive about it, people, just CBDC sellout. And like, listen, I hate the dollar more than anybody, right? I'm not into that. Like, you're the wrong person to come at. I'm being very clear about, like, I think that a lot of people are going to be using these things over the next 5 years or so at least. And then maybe we transfer to scarce cryptos once they become less volatile after that. I'm just handwriting on the wall. This is the way the world's going. It's just like,
mhm.
it's going to rain. Oh, you freaking rain maximalist. Like, shut up. Like,
Yeah,
it's one of those types
yeah,
of
that's
things.
fair. If you just say what is happening, or like it's like that's what you're saying. It's like,
We
well,
got a
no, I'm just
thunderstorm chill
observing.
over here.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I'm observing reality. I'm just letting you know. It's like there's a big difference between like me pushing for this and me just saying this is what it is.
Well, speaking
But
of,
I feel like that
yeah,
always gets conflated, right? You have to attack the
absolutely.
person, the messenger.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, let's hit on this custodial Bitcoin thing. So, Cali
Yeah.
BTC, who's just a known Bitcoin influencer, maxi person, says Bitcoin payments will always have a custodial component until someone comes up with a completely unpredictable, revolutionary new idea that changes the whole game, like increasing the block size. Anyway, so what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's no like perfect way to get around these things. I mean, there's other ways to do it, and I mean, yeah, I had this conversation not that long ago where it was like, oh well, I mean, BTC is like taken over by institutions now, and it's like to some degree, but if anything can become an ETF in the
Hmm.
future, then that could literally happen to every single coin. There's not a single coin that would be able to prevent institutions from like holding it and then just other people investing in it, right? Like I don't see any way around that. Even if you did something like a privacy coin, they could still do all the same stuff in an ETF. It just wouldn't get approved as an ETF. Is the only thing
Probably.
that like stops that from happening. However, if Solana gets approved, then I have no idea what's going to happen. Like that's just like I said, the floodgates will open, and everything will become like an ETF. But
Hmm.
we'll see.
Yeah, the thing that I've noticed though with the whole Bitcoin world is when you had obviously 2014, 13, 15 era of just everyone kind of like modern Bitcoin Cash style stuff, like everyone just using it.
Mm.
Then when you had the block size wars, the ethos seemed to be like, well, it's still the same, but store value and decentralization are more important than cheap payments. But also, we're going to have cheap payments with some very slight trade offs via L2s. Then L2s
Mm.
became Lightning specifically. And then Lightning turned out to be just a load of crap, kind of. Like, I mean, as I've covered many times before, it has certain use cases and stuff. But, like, for the most part, Lightning is kind of gone. It's over as far as like what people say. You're oh we'll just use this, and now the we're not talking about institutions here. We're just talking about the average like Bitcoin maximalist kind of person. They're starting to dip into custodial things, whether it's the Liquid network, which is a federated sidechain you can't get your Bitcoin out of unless you have actual permission from the Federation, which doesn't sound very good to me. And then you
Yeah.
have a lot of Fediment slash eCash stuff going on now, where actually I know a lot of people are doing things this way, where if you have a Lightning payment to make, like a Lightning invoice, people have their coins in this, again, fully custodial Fediment thing that then will like auto swap out to Lightning to do the payment. So Lightning is like the liquidity provider that just the settlement layer for things. But then people
Mm.
actually have their money in custody. I've spoken, I have some friends who are deep into trying to do like ZK rollups on Bitcoin and stuff like that and all this stuff. And it's a little depressing, just the level of, I would say like cope to a certain extent, the level, or there's the level
Mm.
of just
Like
trade
we'll
off,
figure a way to make it happen, or
or
like,
not even that.
or
They're like with Lightning was going to solve everything, and then when it didn't solve everything,
mm.
everything else, it's just like, well, we get to minimize the threat of rug pull from these custodians that we all will have to use.
Right,
And it's
right.
just
So
like,
just yeah, just
oh,
making
like,
up excuses as to why it's still good. Yeah.
well, not even making up excuses, but also just like settling. No pun intended.
Yeah.
Built because a
Yeah.
settling layer, right? Because people just settle for
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
look, at least we got like, at least we don't have a dollar denominated store of value. At least it's something else. And it seems like there's a the freedom money aspect of it. There's still a couple of Bitcoiners who are holding on to that. That are like Eric Voorhees, but he probably doesn't use it much. And then you have
Mhm.
Anita, I forget her last name, some German lady who's still very much into the freedom money aspect. There's a few people who are just hanging in there, but then like
Mhm.
I just the space has got so comfortable with no self custody ever basically, which is
Yeah.
sort of mind blowing to me, you know.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying, like no one knows that Solana, like the average Solana meme trader
Hmm.
doesn't know that Solana blockchain goes down and like causes all these problems because they just have everything on an exchange. So they've
Hmm.
never even like actually used the blockchain of Solana ever, and they've been trading on it and they love it, and they've never actually used the actual blockchain. It's like it's kind of crazy how that's possible. You know what I mean? It's like I'm trying to think of a good equivalent for like stocks or something else, but you don't have to necessarily use a stock to invest in it. So I don't know how to do that analogy perfectly, but I feel like if you were to apply that to something else, it wouldn't make any sense. It's like, oh, I'm gonna buy this computer. It's like, oh, like, is it a good computer? It's like, well, I'm like, the display one or whatever looks nice. It's like, did you
Hmm.
try it? It looks really good. It's like, okay, well, so you don't know if it's actually any good at all, and you wouldn't know until you actually used it, and you could sell it to someone else without actually using it and still not know that it wasn't good.
Hmm.
I think that's an okay analogy, but I mean, it's not perfect, but like, I the issue is just like people don't actually use the actual stuff. Like we do, we use the things to buy things and test everything out and use all the different services and all the different tools. Most people aren't actually doing any of that stuff, so they don't actually like have that that point of contact with the blockchain or with like the whatever technology they're even using. They don't actually, they're just like so far removed from it that they're not really like seeing what's actually going on. Um, yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see like all these virtue principles that we have don't really matter in the end of the day until they do. And so it's going to be interesting to see the
Mm-hmm.
until they do moment where now it's just like, what the hell? I can't trade shitty ape coin person thing. And like, I need to
Mm-hmm.
actually, and then they're going to be like, is it self custodial? Because in their litmus test is, can I do the thing I want, which is trade the garbage I want? Or hopefully
Yeah.
pay my family in another country or like escape sanction or like some kind of like hardcore freedom, like Amir Taki style, good stuff. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
so,
It's
yeah,
interesting that you say like escape a country because like my friend is like, oh, like should I be selling my crypto? Because if we have like World War III or something, I'm like, unless all electricity, if we have a global blackout, sure, but otherwise, like crypto is going to be the most important thing for you to be able to like actually have and retain your wealth and move anywhere and still have it. Like, I think if
yeah,
anything, like there's more reason to have crypto in war times. Though I imagine people are going to sell like as well because it's
yeah,
like, sell your assets for liquid cash, da 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 da. But it's like if you need to move countries and not have a bag of cash, that's pretty much your go-to method. And it was good to see that. I don't know if it was like officially ruled that Bitcoin is like a commodity, but like there was all that news that like they were saying Bitcoin is a commodity, and I've been saying Bitcoin is like gold 2.0
hmm,
forever. So I was like, nice.
yeah. Well, so it's kind of funny as you mentioned, they people sell in times of if there's super times of emergency, you want like food, water, shelter, lots of firepower, and that's kind of it. But if you're like, if this shit, if only a little bit of this, if the fart hits the fan, so the shit, whatever, the fart hits the fan, and stuff is just sucks. You do need money, and at that point, you're not going to be trading gold ingots. You're going to be trading untraceable, or hard to trace, I should say, scarce digital assets, and which takes us to the whole privacy thing. So
Mm-hmm.
Vlad, Vlad Kostia, who does the Bitcoin Takeover podcast, was formerly what I would call a gentle maxi, and now he's really dipped his toes a lot into the Litecoin, Monero, and other privacy coin kind of worlds. He did this thing called the Freedom Gains Fund, where he just allocated a certain percentage of money, a certain amount of money, to what he would call like privacy focused assets, and
Mm-hmm.
he and then just sort of like to see how they perform versus Bitcoin, because a lot of people are like, a lot of the argument with the maxi, which what I love about him is he is I would say like a aligned person that I think is reasonable, and a lot of the stuff I agree with him on. But he's also his bedfellows are almost all like the worst people, or like they're almost all like people,
So, like all maxis
yeah,
and
people who have no common sense whatsoever. So I get to actually see when I post stuff like what he says, I get mostly a lot of agreement. When he posts it, he gets a lot of dumb takes that I was just like, ooh, this is what they think. So one of these things, these
mm,
takes was just like, Bitcoin's the only money that can free the world in the end of the day, because all these other shit coins, even if they do the thing you really want, like actually provide sovereignty, are doing it at the expense of your net worth because they go to zero. Everything goes to zero except Bitcoin. is kind of the thesis. And so this is interesting because he started this fund as a way to this informal fund as a way to sort of counter that or to just like, well, let's see, does it go to zero after this point? And it's a very, I think it, so anyway, he posted, he just said Freedom Gains Fund report after 1 week. For reference, Bitcoin is 11% down against USD. Litecoin minus 18.2% against USD, minus 8% against BTC. But then Monero is minus 4.3 against USD, plus 7.9 against Bitcoin. Zcash of his group is the only one that's plus 1.7 against USD, plus 14% against Bitcoin. NIM, which barely even know what that is, minus 6.8% against USD, plus 4.5. Xano, plus 3.9% or minus 3.9% against USD, plus 7.9% against BTC. Freedom Gains Performance, minus 6.3% against the dollar, plus 5.26% against Bitcoin, and largely being weighed down by Litecoin underperforming. He says, have fun staying surveilled and poor, which obviously, listen, not to discredit, he's obviously having fun here, right? But it is kind of proven an interesting point, and my personal opinion is I think he bought the dip for these sorts of assets. As far as
this is because it was like a week ago, right? So,
well, not just that, but like he bought the dip as far as like Bitcoin has performed better than everything else, kind of for a long period of time, and right now is like the point where a lot of like the Bitcoin's kind of maxed out as far as like presidential candidates are running around chilling it. It's it's big funds, all these ETFs, everyone's kind of into it. There's not that much extra growing room. And also like the lightning hype is kind of gone, and the other solutions on the horizon are just kind of like, there's not a lot of energy around them or anything. And the custodial aspect of Bitcoin is its all-time high, like all this kind of stuff. Now would be a good time, because if you bought into these assets 3 years ago, you'd be just screwed versus Bitcoin today. But I'm not saying that to discredit what he's saying, but it is going to be interesting. And I have noticed that privacy-focused assets have been doing better in this stage of the cycle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's good what he's doing, because I feel like most people are of the mind that like, if I want to be using private coins, it's at like some expense, whether it's like more challenging to use, or I have to spend money converting between them and then to actually spend it, and all these different things. But I mean, at least this is kind of showing people it's like, well, you could still make money by holding a privacy coin as well. It's not like you have to just like lose money and it's either gain money or like have privacy. It's like you can have both. But I mean, as I'm sure you'll probably agree, if you're going to use crypto in general, it should be like for the use case that you're trying to use it for, not just because it's like number go up, which is what we do when we like spend it and do all the stuff that we do. So it's like, obviously it has to be useful for what it's actually trying to achieve and like have some use case. But as long as it actually is like useful to some degree, then shouldn't be any issue with investing in it. But like we said earlier, a lot of the really good projects don't get enough hype because it's like there's nothing to like hype up aside from it has really good technical this and this, and it's like, yeah, but there's no celebrities on it and there's no memes and and it's like, yeah, it doesn't need all that to be like a good chain. But it unfortunately right now it needs that to get a lot of like hype and like news coverage and be talked about by everyone and all that nonsense. But it's like, yeah, I mean, you can invest in privacy coins just for the sake of profit potentially and still make money. So I mean, at least that's good that he's like showing transparently what you can do. And I mean, it's not like it's guaranteed, obviously, but it's good to see.
Another interesting thing to think about on that perspective is the narratives, right? Because a lot of people were like all in on Bitcoin from many like 10 plus years ago. And then over time, it's like, okay, well, these other coins are cheaper or better, whatever to use. more features, but it's like,
Mhm.
well, Bitcoin has overwhelming network effect and stuff. And so even like I knew about other cryptos in 2014, 2015, all that time, but I was mostly using just Bitcoin up until, the end of 2016, just because it's like, well, that's the real one. All the other stuff is fun to play with, but it's just like, it's just play stuff while this is like the real one. And then
Mhm.
it's like, okay, well, then the speed to confirm and the fees started going like way up, or, the speed down, fees up. And it's like, okay, well then you can still pay a little bit of a premium to have the best out of there. There's no second best and all that stuff. And then, okay, but then you start to have like all these features like composability, programmability, all that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, we can't do that, so you have to wrap it, wrap Bitcoin and all this stuff, and then you start to get like privacy and like, especially after like Samurai and Wasabi Wallet and all of them just kind of like went away. Now their privacy is kind of like toast on Bitcoin. You see a lot of
Mhm.
Lightning people talking about, oh my gosh, it's a new thing. Okay, I don't take that seriously. But so the thing is like the list of reasons to use Bitcoin over something else from a cypherpunk valued kind of thing is like the list is getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. And it seems like the last one is store of value, or rather, your money will go up. You take much greater financial risks using other things, which historically, I like, my points of view. Historically, that's kind of hard to argue that like right now,
Mhm.
if anyone could have gone back to almost any year in the past 10 to 15 years and taken any crypto asset over like a 1+ year period, and just it would probably do better if it was in Bitcoin during that time. It's just a
Mhm.
reality. And I guess what Vad's trying to attack then is that last point of like, well, guess what? But again, it's too early to see if he's going to be correct on this. Like, who knows? It could be that the Freedom Gains basket that he pointed out is going to have a fun little pump season for the next few months, and then it's just going to be business as usual. It could be that he's on to like the turning of the tide when, Bitcoin's sort of like topped out, and then its percentage of the crypto markets is just going to go off a cliff, even though its prices are going to still modestly go up over time. Who knows? But I do like that there's tracking of this.
Mhm. I do think one big part of BTC is also that it's like scarce, and obviously you could do that with any other coin, but you don't really see that much anymore. Like there isn't
Mm,
a lot of coins that like their main focus is we want this to be scarce and have like a set inflation rate that is never going to change, and more importantly releasing it to the public somehow without having anyone to like go after, or any like team or whatever.
hmm
All of that, to do that again like really effectively, actually wouldn't be that, like that would be pretty challenging to do, to like come out with something that somehow gets even a fraction of the popularity of Bitcoin, has all the same mechanisms. I don't know how they would improve it and still keep that same thing. I mean, maybe they would have smart contracts or something else, or I don't know what
hmm
exactly they would change that would make it like, why would I even switch from Bitcoin to this? um for me, it's always been like the scarcity aspect, because obviously any chain can do that, but you don't really see that many chains that are like, yes, we're actually trying to be scarce,
Yeah.
and not like pour tons and tons of mint a lot into the market or whatever it happens to be. I mean, you mentioned I don't know if it was Zano or whatever, but like
hmm
the creators of the tokens can just like mint as infinite or burn them or whatever. um like obviously like that's not a good situation. So you definitely want to have something like Bitcoin. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't see anything replacing it as like the digital gold staple.
hmm
But I'm not a maxi by any means, but I do think that Bitcoin will stand the test of time at least for another while. But the way that the inflation halvings work is like it is supposed to be like less momentum each
hmm
cycle, like by design almost. So like you can't also expect that it's going to keep having these crazy gains each cycle either. You have to like tailor your expectations. But yeah, I mean, I'll always be of the mind that like Bitcoin is digital gold,
hmm
and it's good to hold. It's good store of value. I mean, obviously, you can hold any other coin as well, but they might be inflating a lot more or have some other mechanism that like doesn't quite make it the same. Um, but I think privacy coins are great. I think more people should be using privacy coins. More people should be testing them out. For a long time, I was sponsored by Cake Wallet, which was like a great Monero wallet, and they had like gift cards attached to the wallet that you could then spend your Monero on directly, and then do that. Like that was a great setup. More of that, honestly, would be great. If I saw like privacy coins being accepted by all like major crypto services or like Bitrefill and things like that would be a huge advancement for privacy coins. That'd be a big win for the community. By no means am I like BTC is better than privacy coins. They just have like different purposes for me.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely think the biggest thing, like Bitcoin had some unique characteristics at the very beginning that are hard to replicate. And the thing is,
Yeah.
for people who trust the beginning over everything, they're especially hard to replicate. But the biggest thing it has going for it is honestly like a 5 year, several. Let's just say a 5 year head start, or at least a 3 year head start on everything else that is still active today. Where everything else, like what you can do with time, obviously tokens can get distributed over time. The product can make itself proven over time. The founder can go away over time, even if you know the founder. If the blockchain's still there but the founder's gone, it's still then the founding team. All these characteristics can meet it, but it's just that at this point in time, it's just going to be hard to kind of equal that. There's another aspect of Bitcoin which I think that not a lot of people have been talking about because the maxis don't like it and the opponents don't like it either, is that some of Bitcoin's transition to an institutional asset has increased its value proposition for institutions, even though
Yeah.
vastly decreased its value proposition for like end users for digital cash purposes. But like some things, like for example,
100%.
why would you want a radically transparent chain with no privacy? It's just like, well, for the user that sucks. For the institution, you get like that security of like no one's dumping on the market or whatever. You can see it. And then like, why would you want everyone to run a node even if they can't even make transactions on the chain that they're validating? Well, it's because institutions who do all the transactions and stuff just know that there's so many eyes on the chain, and it strengthens the transparency and the value of their asset. Even though there's all these chumps running their own nodes for transactions they can't make, they're kind of used by the institutions. But these sorts of things, and then like, why would you have a code base where you could sync a 2010 era node or 2012 era node and it just still works without ever updating your software? It's like, well, because for boomers and old financial institutions who just can't figure anything out, that works for them. It's a plus that it just never changes in that way. It's always going to work, and that there's just as little risk. And these like old school analysts and stuff don't have to like relearn anything about the code base or be like, well, they implemented confidential transactions at the blockchain level. What does this mean for? No, it's just all there. So it's more valuable for those people. Just the freedom money thing is different. And I guess the Freedom Fund or whatever is sort of a way of charting the public's value of freedom money versus this institutional asset. And I think that the institutional asset is going to be over time less valuable, but more importantly, I think just the timing of it is good, where the institutional in that life cycle is kind of topping out a little bit, and maybe not topping out, but much closer to every company in the world can have a certain exposure to Bitcoin, and then the price only goes up that much from there. Whereas like no one is using privacy coins at all. Basically, there's like a 1,000 people maybe around the world are using it. It's like really low, and that has a massive upside potential. And so maybe that's a strategic thing, maybe not. I don't know.
No, I mean that's fair. But yeah, I mean like we were mentioning earlier with institutions, like Yeah, I definitely don't think that's good. It's good for maybe the price, but with like paper trading and stuff, maybe not good for the price. Uh, but I don't think any coin is actually immune to that either. And it's not even up to the users or the creators or anything. It's up to the institutions to decide whether or not they're going to slap it at an ETF. And then, like, there's nothing you can really do as an end user. Like, how can you stop them from then paper trading or doing whatever? So, like, that is the kind of like unfortunate reality that, like, it's like, oh well, it's institutionalized, like it's, it's all supported by institutions now. It's like, okay, and what stops your coin from having the exact same thing in a couple of years? Like,
Yeah.
well, it isn't right now. And it's like, okay, well, like, fair enough, but like it might be. So like, I don't know, like nothing is totally immune from that either. There's no way to like stop that. Maybe arguably privacy coins just in of their own design
Mm-hmm.
is a defense against that, because they probably won't have an ETF for any privacy coins. Maybe that aspect alone makes privacy coins more valuable. I maybe, I'm not a maxi by any means. So I mean, like, that could be a really interesting pitch that you're like, yeah, well, this privacy coin is probably never going to be taken over by institutions, and that's your protection, and like that's the value proposition, and that's a great value proposition. So I mean, yeah.
Yeah. The privacy thing, I think that, so my point on privacy coins, I do think that they're going to become mainstream. And the Lex,
But like to the point where like institutions would hold them, or
yeah. And the difference is, so here's like an interesting data point on that type of thing.
mm,
PayPal and PYUSD openly advertises a confidential transactions feature now, where they're going,
mm,
basically amounts are going to be hidden, even though the transaction graph is public. And I do think that institutions are not going to be want to be front run on DeFi and stuff like that. And I do think
right,
that some institutions will want to be like, look, this is our Bitcoin balance sheet here. But some people won't want to be like shuffling around. They won't want to be have the they won't want to quietly dump something, and they won't want the market to be
mm,
like, oh, this big chunk of ETH just moved. Oh my gosh, it's they'll
right,
don't they find value in those kinds of things. I think once people start to figure out the downsides of no privacy, combined with the like the risks of not having privacy, combined with just like figuring it out that okay, we can still stop illicit transactions and things because of these things, whether it's a privacy pools kind of thing where you can selectively say, I can't show you which are my transactions, but I can prove that I wasn't one of the hacked ones, kind of thing, which is I think what
mm,
Railgun and some other things have been implementing. Vitalik had a big thing on. I think he was involved with that. Whether it's that kind of stuff, whether it's just simple risk scoring type things, whether it's fully permissioned but private things, who knows? I think that privacy is going to be a massive kind of like when you have your ETH address and just all your NFTs and all your tokens and everything's just there for the whole world to see. No one's going to use that shit at a high level. And so I think institutions
mm,
barely understand what these cryptos are. And once they start to adopt these things, they're going to be like, all right, this is good too. Or, ultimately institutions want to make money. They want to have sound investments. And if something is killing it in the value game. Like if this freedom index, if Vlad's off the cuff thing or some variant of that starts to do very well, there will be some institutions that are going to want to have like a privacy ETF or something like that, and then
right.
they'll just kind of do that. And so it's a little early to this stuff maybe, but we'll get there. I think.
Yeah, slowly but surely, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if institutions do like start getting into the only like the main thing that I would assume would prevent them is like, how is the SEC going to regulate that if everything is like private and it's hard to track
Mm-hmm.
anything down, or maybe it's possible, but it seems like a lot of red tape, and like there's a lot of other coins that they could probably tackle first, because
Mm-hmm.
even just market cap wise. Um, but it'll be interesting to see for sure.
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be a later adopter. But I mean, if you look at the market cap versus ETF thing. It's like Bitcoin first, and I think the Maxis thought it would be that way for a while. But no, it was like Bitcoin and like Ethereum like right after that. And they got so salty
Yeah.
about that. And they're really annoyed that Solana is on the books, is on like the table. Solana didn't get it yet,
Even
right?
I'm annoyed. Like, it's gonna be so crazy if that goes through, man. Oh my god.
Yeah, I think that's where it becomes like the ETFs stop being like this is the most secure, regulated, trusted, blah, 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 blah. All that kind of stuff goes out the window
Yeah.
because it was never real. It was never real to begin with. It was just what is a safe way to make money. And then they're like, okay, well, this is a large asset. Everyone's trading these other things. We can make money off a Solana ETF. Let's just do it, and that's it. That's literally as simple as
Yeah.
it is. Just that's it. It's
Yeah.
all about the money at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's unfortunate, but it's probably that's the game, I guess, for institutions. It's just like what can we manipulate? What can we? I mean, and it's crazy to see, like, especially with the ETFs, it's like 1 month prior to the ETF, it's like hate Bitcoin. Bitcoin's never going to be good. Like 1 month later, we love Bitcoin, probably the greatest asset of all time. Like, you should buy this. We have an ETF, and it's like, okay, well, what happened? Like, you just lowering the price so you could buy it up and then put it in your
Yes,
ETF. Like,
the answer is
yeah.
yes. But
Yes, I know, but it's just like it's crazy that it's like you can be so brazen. It's like, no one wants this. This is the worst. All right, now that I've bought a couple like 100 million or whatever, it's like I think it's a great asset. Like, everyone should have this. It's like, oh,
yeah, it's kind of funny how like that characterization of this sort of remind me of the former U.S. president. I can easily imagine like Trump hated crypto. It's the first illegal game, and then like now just like I love the Bitcoin, have fun with Bitcoin. We're gonna pay be the best, the greatest. I'm selling Bitcoin shoes now, and like just like all right, just flipped, just went right to that.
the only thing I'll say for him is I don't think he really knew anything about it, and maybe still doesn't really.
Mm-hmm.
But I know, like, Vivek was like, look, I talked to Trump about crypto. I told him, like, CBDCs are bad. Trump's like, okay, I agree. And he's like, and I told him about Bitcoin, told him it was great. He agrees. It's like maybe he just needed to, like, talk to someone who actually, like, knows about it and knows what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But I do agree. Like, it is a big flip flop, and I guess we're going to see that a lot more. But I mean, that was over a few years versus like when you see like Larry Fink come out like 1 month later and then being like it was the worst, and now it's the best. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that happened in 30 days, but um, yeah,
Absolutely. Well, which kind of brings us to the Tyler Winklevoss getting into it with Kamala Harris and stuff because there's a crypto advocates for Harris 2024 like accountant stuff, and he's saying the most
yeah,
interesting comical part of the whole crypto for Harris plan is their quote nuanced crypto policy approach, as if being nuanced is the appropriate corrective measure for the administration that tried to nuke the entire industry. I guess it's the mostly peaceful war on crypto. Dear Kamala, please be nuanced when you stop dropping napalm on our industry. Take time to be thoughtful about this. Thank you. So it's kind of funny how
yeah,
like Trump was like anti-Bitcoin years ago. Then it got explained to him. Then he sort of flipped on it. Whereas the Biden-Harris administration, again, we're not talking a new person running for president here. They're talking about the same person who's literally the sitting vice president right now, right? Is now running. And of the administration that was the most overtly hostile in in all of history towards crypto, with the most frivolous kind of SEC lawsuits, the most, punitive, like capricious actions against banks, like everything. And now is like, well, we're gonna be pro you guys. We like you guys too. It's like, dude, come on. Like, I understand. Like, I understand.
I mean, it doesn't even technically say pro; it just says nuanced.
Yeah, it's nuanced. But like, it's funny how it goes from, like, I can understand being skeptical of like Trump's overtures and stuff, but I cannot understand being skeptical of that, but not thinking this is complete nonsense. So, I do think it's a great indicator that of realizing that people are into this new technology and ecosystem, and that you have to kowtow to them to win an election. Otherwise, you wouldn't be, right? Especially a close election. I think that
Yeah.
it's kind of a sign that the election is close, where everyone has to sort of kiss the ring.
Like they're scared and they're like, now we're gonna start changing stuff. Because I mean, I don't. I mean, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think like Trump did any like really egregious anti-crypto like policies, right?
No, I don't think he did anything really.
Yeah,
I
I was gonna say I don't think he really did anything. So it's like at least in that regard, it's like he's not like totally full of shit. If he's like, we're gonna look at this and do this, and it's like, yeah, I mean, you weren't like going after it like aggressively for the last 4 years, and now you're saying like, oh, we totally like think this is really interesting, and we're gonna
Yeah,
look into this. It's like you did, and you said you hated it, and now you're like acting like you're totally on board. I mean, to some degree, I mean, I'm Canadian, so maybe I'm wrong, but it
condolences.
seems like Trump tries to be a populist, in some regards, and I think the Bitcoin take is like him trying to be a populist in that regard. Like he's like, the people like this, like, so I'm going to jump, like I'm on board, like, and maybe he was explained to that it was like different than what he thought originally, but he's definitely going with the like, I'm gonna say what people want, and I mean, I think he's also going to do what people want because he wants to be liked, which is to some degree a good thing. Like whereas like I don't know if Kamala wants to be liked or cares if she's liked,
Yeah,
um, which is bad actually because it would be good if they were like, I don't care if I'm liked and I'm going to do all the right stuff. And
yeah,
but that's probably not what's going to happen. It's like, I don't care if I'm liked. I'm going to do the things that advance my uh, career or whatever, or like help me. And it's like, yeah, that's probably not good. But again, that's my outsider take. So
that
like, I
makes
don't
sense.
really know as much, but like that's what I see from the outside. But yeah, I don't believe at all that they're going to be pro crypto in that administration. It's definitely like gesturing. I'd
Hmm.
love to see them come out with something that they're going to do, or speak on it, or give their take on what CBDCs could look like, or something. Give me something to grasp. But it'll be interesting to see, nonetheless. Like, I imagine that they would just go against it just to be opposite of Trump.
Yeah,
That was my original assumption.
but the thing is, based on the way they've done things, you could tell that they don't think that they. You can tell they don't think that they can just be opposite. They think that being opposite means losing. So,
Hmm.
in this case, it's just like, yeah, they have to do something, some kind of overture. I think they're going to continue the same nonsense as before, maybe be a little less aggressive if they win. Especially if they win, it's just like, haha, because
Although, do we know how legit Crypto for Harris actually is? Like, it's a pretty
well,
small account. It's not verified.
I don't know
It's
if that account is legit, but I do know that
right.
the administration and then the campaign has made overtures. In fact, there was a call. Also, Winklevoss has been roasting Harris over not having the time to drop, like basically saying, "Oh yeah, I'll join this call with crypto industry people to talk about stuff," and then just not saying, "Oh, I'm too busy on the campaign trail. I can't go into this video meeting," and then just being like, "Oh, talking smack about that." So like, there is
Right.
actual like overture. Like we care about the crypto industry. Let's talk. But it's all been like, "Oh, we're gonna talk and evaluate with," which is a lot better than "we want you to die," but it's trying to just make it like less like, so crypto people will be like, you know what, I think I'll be okay if this lady wins. I'd rather vote for her
Hmm.
anyway. But before I was gonna have to vote Trump because otherwise my livelihood is gonna be gone. It just, I
Right.
feel like you're just trying to assuage that fear just enough to like bait and switch them. Whereas
Yeah.
the difference is I don't think the Trump kind of idea of things. First off, he's gone in too hard by like selling shoes and stuff and NFTs, and he's
Yeah.
gone in too hard to be completely the opposite. But also, I don't think he really cares. Like, it's to I think he's 100% indifferent on crypto now. And if it gets him
Mm.
elected, he's just gonna be like, I'll throw you a bone or two, and then just do this business as usual kind of thing. Whereas I do think that so
Even if he
yeah.
didn't do anything, that'd probably still be a lot better than
Yeah,
what we'll get on
if
the
he
other. Yeah.
fires Gary Gensler and doesn't have someone worse in his place that and does nothing else, or Gary Gensler quits as a consequence of whatever. That would be a massive improvement. But yeah,
Like just looking at this account though, I mean,
yeah,
it was only started 3 days ago and there's no indication that it's like actually official. It's just like people who are in support of her who are crypto advocates is how it sort of comes off. I might be wrong, but it would be interesting to see actually something from them that's more like, yes, we're
yeah.
doing
Well,
this for crypto, we're doing something.
that's been sort of the critique, is that they're they're not very the Harris campaign has been extremely like, they haven't said anything. They've just been like, oh, we want to talk to crypto people. They've given no indication of what their positions or inclinations might be whatsoever, and that they're just not. That's kind of the thing. And so even if this is legit or isn't, doesn't really make any difference because they haven't said anything anyway. But also, the Winklevoss twins are smart enough, I think, to not fall for a fake account. So either they know that this is the real account through some insider source we don't know, or he's deliberately trying, or he knows it could be fake and is deliberately trying to just drive home the narrative anyway. Like he's just using it.
Yeah, just like get
Yeah,
people
but I
fired
don't
up
think he's
about,
being
like,
fooled. Is my point.
yeah. I think that's fair.
Yeah. So a lot of crazy stuff. We should probably show some things and then we wrap it up. Do you have anything to show?
I mean, I'm not doing a whole lot these days. You can still, I mean, occasionally I'll tweet and do stuff, so you can check me out on X at Scott C Business, and I'm on pretty much everything at Scott C Business.
Yeah.
I will give a shout out to DB Crypto, who might still be watching, for his video on Solana. Definitely a good watch and very informative and insightful for people to go and check that out.
Yes, I highlighted that during the stream, the video. But I'm putting up first, obviously, your X, which top post is kind of this podcast as it's going. It'd be funny to see when the video catches up to be like to showing me showing. Oh, there it is. Now it's Inception. Now it's like it's like the infinite
Infinite mirror.
Yeah, the infinite mirror right now. Oh, so yeah, definitely follow Scott on X and everywhere else, but mostly on X because everywhere else is kind of a ghost town these days.
Yeah.
And then follow DB Crypto, who, full disclosure on that, he does seem to be, he's an independent dude, but he's very heavy into Multiverse X / Elrond / Eagle / whatever name you choose to call, which sounds like a reasonable project. I'm just saying, just so you know. But do follow him and follow his YouTube and stuff like that. I thought it was a well put together video and researched and well produced video, especially. So
yeah,
and I have seen his relatively reasonable takes online here and there. So follow for that too. And then of course, obviously follow my stuff, which obviously if you're watching this, you already do to a certain extent. And the only parting sort of thought I would say is there's so much misinformation in crypto, and the only way to know anything is to try it out yourself. But the only way to get any more than like, oh, I booted up a Solana wallet and did 5 transactions, is to intentionally put yourself in a place, whether it's like over the course of a day or whether it's the course of like a week or whatever, where you have to rely on this thing, right? Where it's like, don't just like take a bike down the street, take a bike to work one day. Can you get to work on this freaking bike? Does it work for that? Because otherwise you can't get to work and you're screwed. You have to rely on it, then you actually understand it. So don't just do a vanity Solana transaction. Say something like, I'm going to live all on Solana for one day or a week, and there's enough integrations to do certain things, or like I'm going to do all my X activity on Solana or whatever, or I'm going to use Bitcoin like for just like a day or two. Like, no, you have to like rely on it, because then you have to really push it to its limit and actually see if it works as a reliable piece of tech. And you will learn a lot. Any crypto influencer / researcher really needs to do this because y'all don't know. Scott does, but everyone else, y'all don't know shit. You don't know anything. So that's what I would recommend. I guess you'd agree
Yeah,
with that,
it's
right?
oh yeah, yeah. And people got to try stuff. They got to use it. And yeah, like you said, not just one or two transactions. Like actually like do something with it. However, always do your litmus test with the like test the transaction. Make sure you can actually send something, withdraw, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Always a good test. But yeah, in terms of like actually testing it out before you start saying it's like the greatest chainer or something, like definitely buy something with it. Use it more than just that one little thing. Like I tested out the Soul card or whatever, which you could probably get away with for one day, but not for a week because then it gets canceled after a while. I guess a lot of these companies are pretty smart to using these kinds of cards. So, I mean, we still have our prepaid cards that you can get on Bitrefill, which is probably still the safest route at this point. But yeah, definitely test everything out, use it. Always a fan of that. Very few people actually do it. I always say you're the OG for actually using crypto, and you're. I don't know anyone who's like done it longer or like lived the way that you lived on crypto. So I always say like if you really want to learn, you got to go and check his channel out.
Well, thanks. And I have to say, I'm definitely not the only person, and definitely not the longest person to be doing this. It's at the sweet spot of I'm the longest person who's been doing this, who's also like public about it and talks about it.
Public, yeah,
Because
yeah,
there's
yeah,
other
yeah.
people who've been public and talk about it who've been doing it less time, and then there's OGs who've been doing it for like years before me, and
Mm.
and more
They're
adversarial
so
things.
OG that they know that they don't want to talk about it at all.
Yeah, or just they have like they're staying off the radar for good reason, which
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
is one of
exactly.
the
Yeah,
reasons I always tell people the absolute truth that I actually don't have a ton of money because please don't rob me. And it's not
yeah,
just don't rob me because I don't have a lot because I say I have like I actually don't. Actually, I'm like a reasonable person. I'm not one of these because
yeah.
you have to make
Just like
that
a normal guy.
you have to say that sometimes because people assume if you've been in this space for a very long time, you must have
Right.
put your life savings of a tech worker's salary into Bitcoin in
Yeah.
2010 and therefore be able to buy the moon if you wanted to. And it's just not my
Yeah.
case at all.
I'd
But
be making a lot more content if I was like retired. So
yeah, for sure. All right, cool stuff. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to this channel. Follow me, especially on X at the Desert Links, as I'm sure you can see. Follow Scott at Scott C Business, and follow at DB Crypto at DB Crypto. And watch the Solana stuff. And if he's wrong, tell him first, and then come tell me why what we said is wrong. Scott's just a guest. You don't need to tell him at all. Anyway, see you guys. Bye
you could let me
bye.
know.